By the end of this video, the parts of the CompTIA A+ Core 1221101 exam that confuse everyone are going to make complete sense. That's the deal. We're going to stop treating this like a vocabulary test and start treating it like the practical puzzle it actually is. We'll debunk myths about networking, tear down lies about hardware troubleshooting, and look at virtualization in a way that actually sticks. Grab a coffee and let's get you ready for test day. Most people walk into the testing center thinking they just need to memorize port numbers and RAM speeds. But the exam, it wants to know if you can actually fix a broken workstation. Let's clear the air on what's really happening under the hood. Stay with me here. So, you're building a rig or fixing one for a client, right? You'll hear people say that more power always equals more stability, but that's where the trouble starts. Right, quick note. Imagine you're helping a friend build a basic office PC for spreadsheets, and they insist on a 1200 watt power supply because bigger is better. The myth is that a massive PSU protects your components, but the truth is, efficiency curves matter more than raw wattage. If you're only pulling 200 watts on a 1000 watt unit, you're actually wasting energy and money. What I see students do is pick the highest number on the exam because it looks safer. But CompTIA wants you to match the requirements to the build. Why buy a V8 engine to drive a block away? You've got a user complaining that their video editing software is crawling. They want to buy the fastest DDR5 sticks on the market, thinking speed solves everything. Here's the thing. If they're hitting their 16 GB limit, doubling the speed won't do a thing if they still only have 16 gigs. The fact is, capacity is the floor, speed is the ceiling. Students often get distracted by the frequency numbers, but if the system is swapping to disk, you need more room, not a faster treadmill. Does that make sense? A small business owner tells you they don't need a cloud backup because they have RAID 1 mirror. Sounds logical, right? If one drive dies, the other lives on. But the truth is, RAID is about uptime, not data protection. If a virus deletes a file on drive A, RAID 1 faithfully deletes it on drive B at the exact same time. What nobody tells you is that RAID handles hardware failure, not human error or software corruption. If you see a question about preventing data loss from accidental deletion, RAID is never the answer. Use it for availability, not for your safety net. Okay? Now here's the thing about networking. It's the part of the exam where people start guessing because of the acronyms. Stop the guessing. Picture a busy coffee shop where the Wi-Fi just stops working for new customers. You'll hear people say you should just give everyone a static IP to fix it. The myth is that static IPs are more reliable for clients. Actually, let me back up. Statics are great for printers and servers. But for 50 people with laptops, that's a nightmare. The truth is, you probably just have a scope exhaustion issue in your DHCP server. Students often think statics are pro and DHCP is amateur, but in a dynamic environment, DHCP is the only way to stay sane. It's about management, not just connectivity. While we're on this, let's take a quick context detour into DNS. People think DNS is just a phone book, and while that's true, it's also the first thing that breaks when the internet is down. If you can ping 8.8.8.8.8, but you can't get to google.com, the internet isn't down, your translator is. I see students try to troubleshoot the router or the cable when it's really just a misconfigured DNS setting. Right, quick reset if the IP works but the name doesn't. Look at the DNS every single time. Let me put it another way. You're setting up a router in a basement and the signal is terrible on the second floor. The myth is that 5 GHz is always better because it's faster. The truth is, 5 GHz is like a high-pitched scream. It's loud, but it can't go through walls worth a lick. 2.4 GHz is like a low bass drum. It travels through the house much better. If the exam asks about range and penetration, don't get blinded by the speed of the higher frequency. Stay with me here. If you've got walls, you need the lower frequency. If you got that, you're in better shape than you think, because most people just pick the biggest number and move on. Right, let's talk about the cloud. It's not magic, it's just someone else's computer, but the exam has some very specific ideas about how that computer is managed. Let me put it another way. You're running Windows 11 and you open up VirtualBox to run a Linux test lab. Is that a type 1 or type 2 hypervisor? You'll hear people say, it doesn't matter as long as it works. The truth is, for the exam, it matters immensely. Since you're running it on top of an OS, it's type 2. A type 1, like ESXi, is the OS itself. Students often get these flipped because type 1 sounds more advanced, and they think the desktop setup is advanced. It's not. If there's a host OSs involved, you're in type 2 territory, period. Okay? Let's have a mini debate. Suppose you're a developer and you need a place to host your code without managing the underlying Windows updates. Do you want SaaS or PaaS? Some say SaaS because it's all-inclusive. Others say PaaS because it gives you control over the app. The resolution? If you're building the app, it's PaaS, Platform as a Service. SaaS is for the end user who just wants to check email or edit a document. What I see students do is call everything SaaS because that's the buzzword they know. Don't fall for it. If you're the chef, you need the kitchen, platform. If you're the customer, you just want the meal, software. Imagine an online store that gets 10 times the normal traffic on Black Friday. The myth is that they just have really big servers. The truth is a concept called rapid elasticity. It's the ability for the system to automatically scale up when the rush hits and scale down when it's over, so they stop paying for it. People confuse this with on-demand self-service. But remember, on-demand is about you clicking a button to get a server, while elasticity is about the system expanding and contracting like a rubber band. CompTIA loves testing that distinction. Okay, quick reset. We're at the finish line of the concepts, but this is where the exam actually happens, the troubleshooting methodology. Yes. A user calls and says, my computer is dead. The myth is that you should immediately start checking the motherboard or the RAM. The truth. You have to identify the problem first. That means asking the user, what was the last thing you did? Or are there any error messages? I see students jump straight to test the theory because they want to be the hero who fixes it fast. But if you don't talk to the user first, you're just guessing. CompTIA is obsessed with this order. Always talk to the human before you touch the machine. Now, here's the thing. You've identified that the monitor won't turn on. You'll hear people say you should check the internal video card seating. Here's where that breaks down. Start with the obvious. Is it plugged in? Is the power strip turned on? The myth is that exam questions always have complex answers. They don't. Sometimes the answer is just plug it in. What nobody tells you is that CompTIA wants to see if you're a logical technician or a parts swapper. Always check the simplest, cheapest solution first. Okay? You fixed the printer. You're done, right? Wrong. The myth is that the fix is the last step. The fact is, the documentation is the last step. You need to record what you found and what you did. Why? Because 6 months from now, when the same printer breaks, you won't remember the weird driver quirk you discovered today. Students hate this part because it feels like homework. But on the exam, document findings, actions, and outcomes is the final, non-negotiable step of the process. Don't leave it out. We've covered a lot of ground today, from why your PSU shouldn't be a monster, to why you need to talk to your users before you start ripping out RAM sticks. The core one isn't just about knowing what things are, it's about knowing how they interact in the real world. If you can keep that logical technician hat on, you're already halfway to your certification. Remember the question I asked you at the start? Yeah, your answer to that should look very different now. The next step is simple. Free CompTIA. A+ Core 1,221,101 exam practice tests on Survey.com today, no excuses. Subscribe for the next one. Go get that cert, you've got this.